Hey, Buddy Manning here. Welcome to the Garden Report on a Sunday. Celtics still off. Going to be off for a while here as the East Finals begin because since they clinched 10 days ago, and everyone else is going to play a Game 7 here. The Thunder eliminated last night. We can get into that a little bit later, maybe. But we're here to talk Knicks Pacers. That's the game everyone's paying attention to here on this side. The game that's going to decide who the Celtics play in the East Finals here. And Jared Dubin will be in the house. Welcome in, Jared. Great to finally have you here on the Garden Report. And what are you expecting?
I guess that depends on whether Josh Hart, OG Anunoby, or both or neither can actually step on the court. Like, if that can't happen, that obviously significantly changes things. The Knicks would then basically have maybe six guys that they could play, if that. And they have to play in a big lineup for most of the series, which has been kind of a disaster during the time that they've had it out there. Whenever they've had Precious Achua out there with Isaiah Hartenstein, it's not really gone well in the series. So it would put a lot of pressure on like DiVincenzo and McBride and probably Brunson to play all 48 minutes and maybe Precious Achua to play all 48 minutes. Like, it's just a mash unit. So if those two guys can play, then I'm expecting, something approximating a real game. If they can't, then it's basically going to be, can Jalen Brunson do a superhero act against the Pacers? And if not, then it's going to be really difficult for the Knicks to win.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what that's gonna look like if Hart's out, and all the reporting is he's gonna try to give it a go here, and that might or might not go well. So even if he does play and it doesn't go well, is everyone just gonna play 48 minutes or four guys gonna play that? Like, I don't know what they're gonna do because I guess you could try Jericho Sims in rotation or Shake Milton for like a few minutes just to try to balance some stuff out, but you know how it is with Tibbs. Like, I think you're just going to have four guys going close to 48 at that point.
That's what I would assume too. Maybe Alec Burks gives each of the five guys like a 4-minute rest or something like that. And that's how you manage it. But even that seems, I don't know. It's no matter what it is, it's going to be tough. Obviously, basically since Anunoby went out, the Knicks haven't really had a matchup for Pascal Siakam, and he's kind of done whatever he's wanted. And they've tried to change that over the last couple of games, guarding him with Isaiah Hartenstein more. But you saw in Game 6 that basically led to the Pacers just dominating the rebounding battle, and that obviously killed them too. And they kind of want to keep Miles McBride on Tyrese Halliburton, but that gets tougher when, like, if they have Hart and OG back, then it's like, are you sending one of those guys off the bench? Are you bringing McBride off the bench? And if you are, then you don't really have anyone to guard Halliburton for the time that he's off the court, because using DiVincenzo on him early in the series didn't work. You basically sort of have to hope that Halliburton reverts to the guy he's been in the Garden in this series, where he's not been very aggressive, whereas in all the games in whatever the hell they're calling Conseco Fieldhouse now, it's kind of been the opposite. um, yeah, I think, basically when the Knicks have won, it's been, Brunson doing his thing and DiVincenzo or McBride making their shots. And in all of the games in Indiana, it's been sort of Halliburton running them off the floor. And then whenever McConnell and Toppin are on the court and Isaiah Jackson, those guys, like McConnell especially, just gets wherever he wants in the lane. And Jackson pounds them on the glass. And Toppin has been like the best version of what the Knicks thought he could be when they drafted him. And, making really quick decisions, making shots on the perimeter, beating closeouts, getting out on the break, doing like everything that they thought he could do for them against them.
Yeah, and it's a bummer here because, not to go Wilbon, but I feel like the Knicks would have given the Celtics a great series here if they were fully healthy. Even if they had this like healthy version of themselves, where OG's in there and Mitchell Robinson was back playing decently. And, you at least had bodies at that point and a style that could probably annoy the Celtics at the very least. Now, like, even if they sneak through today, it's hard to imagine with 2 days, a 2-day turnaround here, going up to Boston, that they're gonna be in any shape to at least start the series well. Now, I guess the saving grace for them is that Porzingis is gonna miss the start of the series, and it doesn't feel like he's super close at this point, and you're gonna have the every other day off style in the series, which I think affects Horford a little bit, and at that point, I think Hartenstein's enough inside, and you got a two-in rotation there, so you can at least compete in the front court at that point. But like you mentioned, the perimeter defense on a guy like Siakam, if you're not able to stack up there, I don't know how you're going to do it against Brown and Tatum. Let's say OG's back, not 100%, Hart's grinding it out, not 100%. So you have those bodies, but you're still missing all these other pieces. What would a Knicks Celtics East Finals look like?
I had imagined that we would get one game of like Celtic bullshit where the Knicks win, because that always happens in Celtic series.
Game
And
two,
like,
right?
yeah, game two, and like if you can get a Jalen Brunson supernova game, then maybe they take two. But I don't see a real challenge in the series if they're in that condition. Like you said, they just don't have really the bodies to guard Tatum and Brown. And the big thing about the Celtics, which is why last year I thought the Bucks were the worst matchup for the Knicks, because they had so many different ways to guard Brunson. Like they had, Drew Holiday, and they had Javon Carter. They had all these different guys that they could throw at him. The Celtics obviously have that too. They also have Drew Holiday and they
Yeah.
have Derek White. And if they want to put size on him, like we've seen Tatum guard point guards before, we've seen Brown do it, not as much, but they have so many different things they can try against him in a way that a lot of other teams don't. And in the condition the Knicks are in, where he has to create basically everything, that's just way too much to overcome in a series.
What would it have looked like if the Knicks were at full strength? Could it have
Yeah,
been
I,
a
I think
real series?
it would depend if Porzingis was healthy. Like I think if
Yeah.
Porzingis was healthy, the Knicks really have no answer for that. They don't have like the difference between Porzingis and Horford to me is that when you get in that pick and pop game, Porzingis has such a quicker release, and that just kills the style of defense that the Knicks play. And we saw that in the opening game of the season. Um, with Horford, every time he tries to speed up release, he comes up short on the shot. So it's a little bit different where you can recover a little bit quicker to get out there. And then obviously, if you switch Porzingis, he's become so good at punishing smaller defenders in the post. Obviously, he's not full strength right now, so we don't know how well he'd be able to do either of those things. But to me, that was like the big mismatch in the series for them. And after losing Bogdanovich too, they don't have as many big wings that they could try different things against Tatum and Brown. Not that Bogdanovich can really stop either of them, but he's at least a big wing body that you can use in a matchup and like not be so overwhelmed from a size perspective. But without him, without Mitchell Robinson, like it's harder for them to dominate the glass. And if Porzingis is there, I don't think they have a good matchup for him. Like it's hard to imagine what the peak version of both teams will look like because we haven't seen them in so long. Like even the peak version of what we're thinking of as the Knicks doesn't have Julius Randle, who's been out since January. So we don't even really know what that would have looked like. It's hard to even imagine what that series would look like because like we haven't seen that version of the Knicks since January. We haven't seen that version of the Celtics in what is it, like 2 weeks now, almost 3 weeks now. Like the current version of what the peak healthy Knicks would be still includes like 3 of their top 5 front court guys out, basically. Like it's hard to say.
It's wild. It's been an insane playoff from an injury perspective so far across the league at this point, and the Celtics have caught it too here with Porzingis, as you mentioned, so they're not immune from it. But everybody, it feels like, has suffered from it for some degree. But the playoffs roll on here. I want to give a quick shout out to Prize Picks. Go over to prizepicks.com/CLNS. Great for these playoff nights, whether it's basketball or hockey. Got baseball going on right now. Just pick 2 guys, pick more or less on their stat projections, and you're off. It's our official daily fantasy sports partner here. I love going in and just seeing what they think guys are going to do on any given night from a points, assists, rebound perspective. You use our code CLNS, you get 100% deposit match up to $100. It's prizepicks.com/CLNS. It's kind of crazy, too, with the way these injuries have stacked up, Jared, that the Celtics have just kind of been rolled out the red carpet to the finals. Like in round 1, it's no Butler. Round 2, they had a fight early. Like I'll give that to them. The Cavs showed up. They played a representative game, but Allen was out, and then Mitchell's out by the end of it, so they had nothing left. Especially at Game 5 in both of those series, because like Hawkins goes out for Game 5, and the Heat are absolutely done at that point, going on the road, and then the Cavs lost Levert for the Game 5 in that series. So now to be going up against a Knicks team potentially here that has nobody left, it's crazy. And I'm not gonna criticize them for it. Does it impact them going into the finals? Maybe, but who knows? The finals team they play might have injuries at that point. They've earned this to some degree, right? With the 1 seed and just building a 50-game lead on the Bucks and Knicks in the East. This is kind of what the path is supposed to look like as the 1 seed, and it's probably a little bit easier than it would normally be for the average team, but they earned it, right?
Yeah, that's what you get for getting the 1 seed, like you said. There's nothing you can do about other teams suffering injuries, and like you should never apologize for playoff wins. Take them literally however you can get them. Like especially a team like the Celtics, obviously the expectations are like everybody's going to be massively disappointed if they don't win the finals, which to me is like, I know we could talk about that a little bit later, but like the thing about them right now is they haven't really been challenged on a serious level yet. And I think to go back to what you were asking about, like the peak version of the Knicks against the Celtics, they at least would have like woken them up before the finals because they've been kind of like taking it easy, sleepwalking through a lot of these games and like just sort of turning it on at one point or another, which they can do because they're so talented, even without Porzingis. And like they'll just put together these 6-7 minute stretches, especially on defense, where it's just like you cannot score against this team. And I think the Knicks, even though the offense probably would have been a bigger issue for them than the defense, like they would have at least woken them up to be like, okay, you got to bring that like for all 48 minutes or you're going to get outworked to a certain level. It's a little bit different against the Pacers where they have to lock in more in terms of making sure they're on their game in transition defense as opposed to like, you know, the hustle kind of stuff and making sure every single rotation is on point and on the glass and things like that. And the way Brunson can just kill you if you mess up even a little bit coverage. With the Pacers, it's more about like get out to Miles Turner on the perimeter if that's going to be your coverage. Make sure Siakam doesn't get a free lane to the basket when he drives. And don't lose Halliburton in space and don't let him get into open space on the break.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think everyone would agree that at full health, Knicks, Pacers, the Knicks would be the tougher matchup here. Given the state of the Knicks, and I did talk to, Scott Agnes on here a couple of days ago about the Pacers. I don't want to get too in depth on them, but they're probably the tougher matchup here. And they beat the Celtics twice during the regular season, probably a little bit of a different version of the Pacers. They had healed. They had a more consistent Halliburton at that point before he actually went down with an injury in the win over the Celtics at Indiana in that miniseries. That kind of threw his season off completely after that point. But still, Siakam in the mix here. They played the Celtics tough in Boston the last time those two teams faced, which I think was in January maybe. And they have relative full health there in Indy, aside from Mathurin, who that is a real loss there. I think they'd be the tougher matchup, right?
Yeah, I think quickly to add to that, like one of the things that the Pacers would challenge is the Celtics transition defense, which we know they can get, in and out of how locked in they are on that specific task. And then I think the way that they've been playing throughout these playoffs, where they've been putting heavy pressure on ball handlers all the way deep in the backcourt, basically all 94 feet, pressuring further out and more often in the backcourt than basically any team in the history of the tracking data, which goes back to the 2012, 13, or 13, 14 season. I can't remember which one. They did that in the first round because Dame was playing hurt, and they've done it in this round because the Knicks basically only have Brunson. But I think that's a good idea against the Celtics too, because of how careless they can get with the ball at times and how you can make their offense bog down when you get them late in the clock. That's the big thing with them is like get them late in the clock and make them go like make them play into their worst instincts, even though they can still get baskets when they're tapping into their worst instincts because those guys are so good. But that's like Indiana's best hope is to do that. And I think having prepared through these first two rounds while doing that for basically all 48 minutes, and the Celtics haven't really seen that at all and haven't seen a defense really locked in on them at all yet. That presents a little bit of a different challenge, especially if the Knicks in their current state, like I'm not really sure what they can do. If you told me that OG and Hart were fully healthy, then I think that's more of a challenge for them. But I don't think you can come close to guaranteeing that at this point.
Yeah, and I want to pull it up here because one thing that stood out to me about the Pacers defense in particular here during the regular season at the very least, I think they were pretty good at limiting opponent threes, if any. They didn't limit much out there, but opponents actually shot the fewest threes per game against the Pacers this year. So they gave it up at the basket in turn. They kind of played a weird style that took away the three, but gave it up inside. 29 threes a game their opponent shot against the Pacers and average like 36% there. So they can do that here, and that might bridge the gap a little bit in terms of trying to stop Boston or at least slow them. But Boston will take the points inside too. So that's going to be the difficulty for them. Halliburton, a huge mismatch defensively that they're going to have to try to hide somehow out there. And, the Knicks will have that too with Brunson to some degree because the Celtics have just become so good at exploiting those mismatches on the floor. Maybe a little less so without Porzingis, but they'll still find a way to put those guys in actions. So that is something the Pacers have going for them a little bit there. I guess what the Knicks have going for them is Brunson. I mean, he's just been incredible. And he probably can put that team on his back for a game or so there. I don't think you can necessarily say that about Halliburton right now with how inconsistently he's played. So the best conceivable player they could go against in this series is clearly Brunson there, but the better team at this point would probably be Indiana.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm with you. I think another thing you mentioned the threes, like one of the things that can get the Celtics in trouble sometimes is how often they're just like, let's walk up and take a bunch of threes. So the fact that the Pacers force you to come inside might actually work in Boston's advantage in terms of like the things that can occasionally get the Celtics into trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. And they had a weird series like that too against Cleveland because Cleveland, I thought, did a really good job getting out to some of the role guys by that point. I think there was a crazy stat on ESPN that they can contest to like 77% of the threes heavily in game 2. So the Cavs showed up defensively and made the Celtics see crowds inside. Like I think they've already been through some of the defensive challenges, or some of the biggest defensive challenges in the East at the very least, between Miami and the wacky stuff they do and Cleveland, who's just a really good team on that end. So to go against the Pacers here, it'd be different. Like you'd have to go inside, like you said, but it'd be easy to some degree, not to put it so lightly, but it's just not a good defensive team, and they're going to be able to score in droves. I guess the biggest challenge going against the Pacers is just not getting caught in that up and down pace and playing a 130, because they did play a game against them this year that they lost 133 to 131. So you don't want to get caught up in that to put a bow on the Pacers here.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is transition defense. Like if you can stop them from getting, their good looks in the first 6-8 seconds of the shot clock, and then when the Pacers do get offensive rebounds, like just don't lose Halliburton. Like you can lose anyone else, like just don't lose him.
Yeah, and you're going to be in the crowd this afternoon. What's this, just being in New York, what's this year been like with the Knicks doing what they're doing here. The biggest reason I want the Knicks here, and I've been saying it probably for like 3 months at this point, ever since it was clear that they were going to be a really good team. The atmosphere of this series would be out of this world. Like Pacers, Celtics, I guess you could do the whole Neesmith thing. And, it's been a fun matchup to some degree during the year. I've never been out to Indiana for a Pacers game. Actually, I went to All-Star this year, which was solid. But uh, they just wouldn't be the juice that Celtics-Knicks would have. And even with this half healthy Knicks team here, if it's that, there'd still be juice going into that series. You'd still have the MSG crowds for those games. You'd still have Boston saying F New York. You'd still have just everything. Got fans going back and forth, packed crowds. Like, there would just be an atmosphere around this series, even if it ends up being not that competitive, that would just be amazing to be around in Boston. It's going to be 80 degrees soon in both these cities. Like, if we don't get this, I'm just gonna like fall over. I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Yeah, I mean, you'd also have like the which garden is the real garden arguments. You'd have
It's been
absolutely
11 years.
you'd have absolutely like insane level side talk videos outside Madison Square Garden based on what's happened in the past. The crazy thing about the Knicks and the Celtics is obviously they've been in the same division forever, and they're both teams that have been in the league forever, but they've basically never been really good at the same time. So you haven't had like these playoff battles that you would expect from teams that are like historic teams that have been in the same division and same conference for forever. Like, what was the last actual good series between the Knicks and Celtics? Like, I don't know. The 2013 series was not that good of a series, right?
No.
Like, that was sort of the tail end of what that Celtics team was.
You had like a
Like,
2010 one too, right? Where like Amari had just gotten there and Melo wasn't there
I don't
yet. I
think so
don't.
because they lost to the Heat in 2011, which was the first year that they had traded for Carmelo. Amari punched the wall in Miami, and they lost in the first round. And then the next year was the Jeremy Lin team, and they got beat by Miami also.
All right, it was
Um,
that very forgettable 2011 Celtics team that had like Shaq and Jermaine O'Neal, and the Celtics got swept. That's what it was.
ah,
So yeah, they haven't been good at the same time, like you said. 90s Celtics have fallen off by that point. Getting the mellow, the Celtics are starting to wind down a little bit. Knicks never really hit a stride, even with some decent years during that era. And then,
yeah, and
once the
then the
Celtics
'80s,
started
the Knicks
rising again.
were terrible until getting Ewing when the Celtics were unbelievable. Like,
Yeah.
it's just been a long time.
Yeah, I hope we get it. I really do. And then, for years to come here, if the Celtics going to be that team to beat here and the Knicks are still in the mix, like, do we get a fully healthy series at that point? I would hope that we'll start to see these two teams like in the mix a little bit together for years to come. And then you get the whole Porzingis thing, right? We didn't even mention that.
Yeah.
That's like another layer to it that's pretty fun there if he's able to get back there in this
Yeah, I guess you
series.
could go. Tibbs too. Obviously, was a Celtics assistant, and so that sort of propelled him to being a head coach.
Yeah, for sure. And if you want to get in the building tonight or this afternoon, it's gonna be tough. I won't make any any other characterization of it. It's gonna be tough, but your best bet is the Game Time app here. Go check them out right up until and around game time if you're in the city today. Just see what the deals are, and if you're using it for the first time, you can get $20 off with our code CLNS over here. Game Time, the best deals are right up until and even a little bit after game time on the app here. That's the way to do it. And of course, if you're in Boston here, game 1 Tuesday coming up quick. So check out the deals that are already there over on the app. And if you're in Boston on Tuesday night, maybe there'll be some last minute deals for game 1 of the East Finals here. Of course, hockey playoffs going on right now as well, baseball games, whatever it might be. Game Time's got it, events and concerts too. So head over there and download, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Of course, terms apply. It's the Game Time app. Again, CLNS, use that code, $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. You mentioned it a little bit earlier, Jared. Uh, the disappointment if the Celtics don't win a championship at this point, is that valid?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's okay to be disappointed. Like, obviously, they were the best team in the league throughout the regular season, or at least had the best record in the league. They assembled all of this incredible talent, and especially like the group of the top six guys that they had in different ways that they can work. The 5-man combinations that you can put out there, and the different ways that Holiday and Porzingis solved so many of the issues that were the reasons that they fell short in previous seasons. I do think it's like a disappointment if they don't win, but like if they get to the finals and lose to like Nikola Jokic, like you're gonna be like, this is a failure. Like I don't understand that. Like I jump off board between disappointment and failure. I think it's okay to be disappointed, but only one team wins the finals every year, and I think it's still an accomplishment, no matter how good your team is, to get to the conference finals, to get to the NBA finals. Like you're one of the last 2 or 4 teams left in the league. You're the best or second best team in your conference in that given season. Like you're an inner circle contender no matter what. So while it's disappointing, I think, especially obviously from Celtics fans' perspective, waiting since 2008 and trying to get, the match the Lakers and banners and whatnot, like, or is it the other way around? I never remember because it doesn't matter that much to me. But I understand being disappointed, but I do think like when people say it's a failure, like I don't know how much I can say that, especially like they should still get some more shots at it.
They should, but this might be that best opportunity, and that's what would be the absolute killer if it does happen. Like you mentioned with Denver, is Murray ever going to be fully healthy during this run? I don't know. It doesn't look like he's himself right now at this point, so that's an advantage. Minnesota, if they get there and they're playing a game 7, those two today, which is going to be a big factor in Boston's run as well. Are they ready yet? I think that's a real question. And then, you got Dallas moving on last night, who I think is a really good matchup for Boston with those two guards you can try to go at there. So this is it here. Like you got full health relatively here. And, I do think they're going to need Porzingis to come back to win the whole thing. I just don't think you're going to get two great series from Horford, which you're probably going to need to win if he's not coming back. But we'll see there. But I do think the expectation should be to win. At this point, with where things stand, where it's getting to, what we've seen from them so far, it'd be like a capital B big disappointment, I think, if they don't win it all here. And is it a failure? I'd have to see how the finals go. Like if they lose on like a buzzer beater in game 7 of the finals, it's gonna be like, all right, run it back next year. But you can't get like outclassed by Jokic in the finals, I think that's when it would become a failure, I think, to not stack up with the talent they have here. And a lot of it's gonna come back to Tatum. And I think that's probably, I'll ask you like what the biggest factor is gonna be in terms of them winning it all at this point. But I just think you're gonna have to get closer to like great Tatum at this point. He's been good so far. I think he's done a lot of redeeming things in spite of the bad shooting. But he's got to be great, I think, for them to win it all. And you probably got to have Porzingis out there too for that to happen. But I think that's what it's going to come down to. The best player in these series wins a lot of the time, and he just hasn't been that through 2 rounds.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing, especially in a matchup with any of the West teams, is getting Porzingis healthy. Like it just changes so much in terms of the geometry of the court on both sides, the way he can space and the way he is able to punish mismatches, and then obviously the way he can erase so much space in the paint for them, just at sort of a different level than Horford can. Like that's the biggest thing to me. And then like yeah, you can't have Tatum shooting like 40% from the field. Like you just cannot have that against an offense like either Denver or Dallas especially, and then against the defense like Minnesota. Like you can't have that and expect to come away from the series with a win. And then I think we've seen in the playoffs that in the games where Derek White isn't hitting his threes, you need somebody else to step up and do that for the Celtics offense to operate at its peak performance. Like you need Brown or Holiday to hit some threes out there too.
or even Pritchard, who's been excellent this postseason. Like you
He's
might end up,
obviously, not out there as much,
yeah, yeah,
especially if Porzingis is back.
right, yeah. But you might have to do some flipping there if White is cold on any given night. Try to get some more from Pritchard at that point. So that'll all be a factor. Last one I got. Can Dallas make the finals after what we saw from them these first two rounds?
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to think so, right? Like the way they're playing defensively right now, and basically since making those two trades for Gafford and Washington, they've been unbelievable on defense. Like the biggest thing to me in the playoffs for them so far has been like Kyrie's defense has been incredible, like universally incredible throughout both series. And Luca, I think for most of the first round series was also really good on defense. The second round, he's been a little bit more physically limited on that side, I think. But you put those two guys in the way they're able to create basically anything offensively, and you take the way they're playing defense right now, like I think it'll be tough for them to match up with the size of either Denver or Minnesota. Just like Minnesota's like combination of size and length, and then obviously Denver is just so big in the front court with Porter and Gordon and Jokic, and it's just the size and physicality. I think of either one of those teams is probably going to be an issue in the same way Dallas's size and physicality was an issue for Oklahoma City. Like those teams are just even bigger than them, but like I don't think you could like if you make the conference finals, you are capable of making the finals. Like that's always the thing to me. I think.
He's Jared Dubin. I appreciate him doing this. Great to talk to finally here for the first time on the Garden Report. Been a great follow of mine for a long time. You can find him on Twitter at JA Dubin JA Dubin5, and you can also find his work at lastnightinbasketball.com. Great to have you here, Jared, today. Enjoy the game. It's going to be crazy down there.
Yep. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
All right. And for everybody else here, of course, shout out to our official golf leisure partner here, our awesome clothes partner here. You know them for their golf gear, but they got great style too for this spring, for this summer. Check them out at pxg.com/garden report, where you can get a 10% discount on all apparel at checkout. And it's polos, it's hats, it's tees, it's anything you need for the course, but it's great for off the course too. And if you are playing golf this spring, this summer, you got to feel good. And to do that, you got to look good. And that allows you to do both. Those polos, especially, you're able to get right through your swing. You can feel the wind kind of blowing through it. It's light. It's really comfortable, I think is how I describe it most. It's almost like one of those like, workout shirts. But with a nice laid back feel as well for if you're just chilling. So pxg.com/garden report, check them out, see what they got over there. A lot of colors, a lot of different styles of these different clothes too. So check it out and get 10% off all apparel at pxg.com/garden report. Again, pxg.com/garden report. Thanks again to Jared. Thanks to Prize Picks. Go over there, prizepicks.com/CLNS. Use the code CLNS for a deposit match over there as well. In the Game Time app, where you can use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Of course, terms apply. We're off to practice, so follow along with coverage we'll have down there. We'll see if Porzingis practices today. That's about to get started in a little under an hour here. So I'll see you over there, and we'll see you tomorrow with reaction to Knicks Pacers and who the Celtics East Finals opponent is going to be. Should have something live tonight. Podcast with Noah in the studio. They'll be out tomorrow, and then we'll do a full Garden Report preview of the East Finals tomorrow night. So stay tuned for all that here on Celtics All Access and CLNS Media, and we'll talk to you then.